Hey everybody, welcome back to X's4 Podcast. This is the Daily X. We bring you news, information, and discussions about your favorite Marvel titles, most notably the X-Men. I'm Nico, and you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at NicoAction. That's NicoAction. In this next segment, myself, Steve, Drew, and Josh come together to talk about Wolverine number 13. Wolverine is part of Ben Percy's bigger plan for the Marvel Universe, where his Wolverine and his X-Force have kind of worked together as one big title. Now, sometimes that's to the benefit of X-Force, and sometimes we feel it might be to the detriment of the storytelling on Wolverine getting to feel like a unique experience. Whichever way you feel, we hope you enjoy our next segment, and if you do, don't forget to give us a like or subscribe. And until next time, guys, keep those Krakoan gateways open, and we'll see ya. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to X's for Podcast. I'm Nico, and you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at NicoAction. That's NicoAction.
Hello, I'm Steve, and you can find me at Howdy Duda on Twitter. That's HOWDYDUDA, and I often appear over with X of Words on the X of Words podcast on Twitter as well.
I'm Drew. You can find me online at Twitter and Instagram at Drew43. That's at DREWSIPHER3.
And I'm Josh Wheel. You can find me at Asleep at the Wheel, WEIL on Twitter and at asleepatthewheel.com. And for the next 2 years as the Progressive Democrat running for U.S. Senate in the state of Florida, you can find me across social media at Wheel, the number 4 U.S. Senate, and at joshwheel.org.
When we have somebody come in, we try to get to know them a little bit better, understand their X fandom, and interact with them as sort of the Xer that they are. Now, it is without a doubt that I am the biggest Wolverine fan on the podcast because I am a Wolverine fan, and that puts me leagues ahead of most of the rest of our contributors. So, that's kind of my three-snicked cross to bear. Now, without question, Josh, Drew, and Maddie, I have no idea how the three of you wind up on Wolverine titles so much when I make the schedule. But I gotta know, Steve, what are your feelings on Wolverine? Do you have a specific version of Logan you prefer? Do you have a specific version of Wolverine you prefer? And what is your least favorite thing about Wolverine canon?
Okay. Well, I am a Wolverine fan in general. I do like Wolverine. I've not been particularly hot on this particular run of Wolverine. I've been kind of vocal about that. My favorite version of Logan is easily the Claremont era Wolverine, both the Wolverine Frank Miller miniseries and just his character throughout the Romita and Silvestri eras especially. I thought he was just a very deeply sensitive man wrapped up in this gruff exterior, slowly unlearning his toxic behavior as time went on.
Okay, well, I need you to stop talking so sexy to me right now because this is getting erotic.
I'll move on then to my favorite version of Wolverine, which is absolutely the Tom Taylor Laura series. I love it so much.
I'm hopping up and down and clapping.
Good, yeah. I mean, it's one that I always recommend when people ask me what's a Wolverine series I should read. I always say just read the Laura series because it's the best one there is. It's absolutely fantastic for Wolverine solo titles. Absolutely.
And it encapsulates so much that I love about Logan in it, even though it's in a different character. So I really get that. It is one of my all-time favorites. And the omnibus is beautiful. If I have one complaint, I feel like the final arc maybe doesn't smack as hard as I want it to.
The old woman Laura arc, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really into the constant rehashes of Old Man Logan. I'm not really interested in like Old Man Iron Man or Old Man Star-Lord or none of that. But I don't really particularly enjoy the original series.
The original Old Man Logan? Me neither. Yeah. I am not a Millar guy. I
not
just never
Millar guy either. Yeah.
It's not in my DNA.
Yeah, I do really enjoy Ben Percy on Logan so much. I love the way he writes Logan, but I just this Wolverine title for me is not necessarily it.
So then what's your least favorite bit of Wolverine canon? Is it the Old Man Logan of it all? Or are you just like, I can't Albert and LCD? But no, I mean, you have to Albert and LCD. It's literally a requirement.
No, it's Romulus.
Yeah, okay, cool. No, then great, it's Romulus, great!
Romulus. Hate it.
Yeah, I
He's a dog mutant, I don't know.
Well, and it's like, dogs and cats have been fighting since immemorial.
I laughed loud at that. That is so funny, but like, it's not
everyone is entitled to their opinion on Romulus, but all other opinions on Romulus are wrong.
They would be Wrongulus, is what they would be. They would be Wrongulus. If I have to pick a favorite era of Logan, it is the era that hangs on my wall. It is the era that I think of whenever I think of what a good man he's become. I love Jason Aaron's Wolverine and the X-Men. It is my happy place. Him reforming Quentin Quire is like, it's just everything I ever wanted, right? So, Wolverine and the X-Men by Jason Aaron with those beautiful Nick Bradshaw covers. That's where I'm at. How about you guys? What do you guys feel is either the best version of Wolverine, the best iteration of Logan, or the thing that is the most Romulus about Wolverine's past?
So I like that Wolverine is, to me, he's like Marvel's Batman. And I don't just mean like way oversold and put in way too much shit to force us to buy it.
And
Like,
definitely eats pussy.
and definitely eats pussy. That there's so many different versions that can feel very dissimilar, but the shared universe has a good way of kind of blending them. With Batman, you have the detective, you have the surrogate family, you have the Justice Leaguer, you have the Man Among Gods, you have like enough in a way where you can have this story. You can have these gritty street level real types of stories, and then you can have him like flying through space in a bat X-wing to fight Apocalypse on, or fight Darkseid on Apocalypse, and it all just kind of works. And I feel like Wolverine is that for Marvel, because we get the same thing. Like, we get Wolverine fits on the Avengers, and Wolverine fits in Japan and in old westerns, and and in samurai stuff, and in orgy houses on the moon, and and as a teacher, leading the
Did you get a little
school.
breathless there? Did you actually take your own breath away saying Logan and orgy houses on the moon? Did
I
you
had
give
to like
yourself the vapors?
No, I just had to like swallow a little cough that wanted to come out. I think for my money, my favorite round of Wolverine, and it probably goes back to just default setting, but the first Wolverine solo issues I had were some of the Larry Hama ones in the 70s and 80s where Jubilee was running with him.
Oh, love it.
Yeah, those post Uncanny 250, pre Uncanny 300, like that era in there, and he's done that a number of times. But I love him as gruff, unwilling mentor, or reluctant mentor to young ingenue. I think it's something that's played so well, time and time again, with different characters, and never in a way that feels like icky, like never in a way that feels sexy or gross.
How about you, Drew? Where does your Logan lie, or does your Logan lie in Laura? Or do you have a least favorite Loganism that you loathe?
So to me, like, Ben Percy really showed me like who Wolverine is through his podcast. Just because I didn't really care about the character before, he was just like whatever. But I recently read Claremont's Wolverine, like the Midnight in Madripoor epic collection, where he's Patch and all of that, and I actually really like that Wolverine. Kind of, I find that interesting of him going like quote unquote undercover to.
Well, then I can't recommend the Jed McKay Black Cat two-parter that features Logan as Patch any more than the most, because it really does have a lot of that magic, but with a lot of humor. And I do hear where you're coming from, because I love me a Madripoor Patch Logan, and I don't think there's any better way to transition to this issue than bringing up the times that Logan looks so damn dapper in a tux. Of course, we're here to talk about Wolverine number 13, which is Wolverine Legacy number 355 for those
Damn straight.
playing along at home. Now, the issue is written by Ben Percy, as has this entire run of Wolverine, as well as X-Force, with art by Scott Eaton, Oren Jr., Matthew Wilson, VC's Corey Pettit, design work by Tom Muller, a number of variant covers, including Simone Bianchi, Phil Jimenez, Marte Gracia, Russell Dauterman, and more. But the main cover was done by series mainstays Adam Kubert and Frank Martin. Now, this issue was kind of like the unlikable man party in a lot of ways, and I'm really okay with calling it that, because whether it was Logan, Beast, or Deadpool, this was a large list of people that are kind of divisive characters. And I feel like Percy, as a writer, lives at divisive characters. As much as I enjoyed the trappings of the issue, I perhaps felt like the issue didn't stand on its own as a whole outside of the Deadpool exchange. Before we get into specifics, did you guys feel that this kept up the energy of the Hellfire Gala, or were you maybe looking for something a little bit more gala-y?
I mean, it had some nice little pages. For the most part, though, I didn't really expect a Ben Percy issue too much on the party. So, it kind of gave us a couple nice bar moments or, cameos at the beginning and end. For me, as I finished reading it, I felt very much like I feel like I can see Percy's outlines for some of these things. Like I can see his like long story and what he's doing after I read an issue. And it's not always good because what I mean by that is like I finished this issue and I could easily see like Percy at like a Word document or a spreadsheet, like laying out his story issue by issue. And he's like, all right, number 13 is where, that's the one where, Beast, we definitely show like Beast is completely dark and he's going to be problematic. Like that's, and like not enough to fill a whole issue. Like he's stretching out his like plot beats a little too decompressed. And then, we get filler and we get, what we've had sometimes, like 3-issue arcs that feel like they should be 1 or 2-issue arcs that definitely should have been 1. And like many of our Hellfire Gala issues and what we've seen, if it wasn't a red issue, it is very much just the continuation of the ongoing story from that title, just taking place at the gala that night.
That's a really great way to look at it. Kind of in the vein of Children of the Atom, which so they said that Children of the Atom. So Drew, I'm taking a big magical time tennis ball and I'm like quantum serving it with my mega racket right at you, Drew, because that was the dumbest thing I've said. So Drew, you had made a comment that a couple of weeks ago you were like, and it was one of those times where you kind of had like Drew sass, which I love when you get kind of Drew sassy because it's the spice on my poutine, right? And you said, they said Children of the Atom wasn't going to be part of the crossover, and now they're kind of saying as part of the Hellfire Gala, which is it, guys? And we kind of got an answer in that Children of the Atom issue had fuck all to do with the gala, right? It just kind of vaguely happened around the same time.
Can we also mention that, because I wasn't on that issue when we talked about it, can we also mention that Children of the Atom 4 also had fuck all to do with Children of the Atom 1? Because I felt like it very explicitly contradicted that whole issue and made me feel like, what the fuck am I reading? I think Coda 4 was more coherent by itself. It did not have anything to do with the Hellfire Gala, but I am just amazed that series continues to not remember what it's done in previous issues when there are so few previous issues to keep track of.
I'm going to have to chalk it up to the editing, you know what I mean? Like,
I don't, this is not I don't think Vita's forgotten who these characters are. This feels like a Too Many Chefs re-edited, cut so many times book. It absolutely does.
If I may interject, I was on that episode, and I do think that it was just that it became about the gala because of the timing, the delayed publishing schedule on that one.
So with that amazing point in mind, thanks for being on that episode, buddy. Drew, how do you feel about an issue that was actually set up to be a gala issue that, it's gala-ish. It's attending the gala the way if you're also at the same hotel and walk past that ballroom on your way to the bathroom, you were at that gala.
Yes.
Yeah, that is kind of how this issue plays out, and it's like I'm actually enjoying X-Force. Wolverine is man, like I don't hate it, but it's not my favorite either. Yeah, and to me, a lot of this was like, I don't know, like the beginning, I'm just like with those people going into the bathroom, I'm like, who are these people? Like I don't know who they are. The guy, and I don't know.
I don't think they were even anybody at this point.
Yeah, but it felt like it was supposed to tie into what we saw in the earlier Hellfire Gala issue. The first time when Emma tore Beast a new blue fairy asshole for having, broken Geneva Conventions on the plant people from South America. Like this, it was supposed to tie back to that, but they didn't feel as visually recognizable. Like maybe I just missed the visual cues. It felt like them, but different them. Like Wasn't the main guy from that country supposed to look like Joey's dad from Friends? Like, didn't he look like a short, fat, like balding, like Italian dad who like yells at you for like cutting the garlic wrong when you're making your gravy?
So you're implying that you think that that character should look like someone Leah Remini would be married to on a sitcom.
Yes.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm completely with you. We have very specific frames of reference for each other, dude.
Instead they all looked like Hungarian orchestra composers.
Oh, I completely get that. Now, Steve, I have a question for you. This is my first time covering X-Force or Wolverine with you, which means you're kind of an amazing new vantage point on these titles for, not just for me, but for the show. How do you feel about where the Wolverine X-Force narrative is currently sitting? I'll be honest, I'm a big Percy fan. I am maybe not the biggest Wolverine by Percy fan. I'm a big fan of the Percy podcasts. And X-Force isn't bad, but this book feels the least necessary to me and a number of our contributors. Is it that way from the outside as well?
Yeah, I have called for the cancellation of this run of Wolverine when I've been involved with X-Words in the past, and I stand by it. I don't think it should exist, this run of Wolverine. It's nothing against Percy. It's nothing against any of the artists who've been working on it, or, well, not most of them. Scott Eaton does a fantastic job in this issue, as does Oren Jr. I think they both make Beast look really good for once. In this issue, like in the way that Josh Cassara can make him over in X-Force. I am a fan of this X-Force run. It's actually one of the more engaging X-Force runs that I've read. And I think a large part of that is I enjoy watching Beast slip further and further into his horrific megalomania, and I'm just waiting for consequences for him. So this issue felt real good for me, specifically to see Sage slapping the shit out of Beast and to see people calling him on his bullshit. It's not enough.
But it was good.
Yeah, it was good, but he needs obviously more to come.
I like that you pointed out Oren Jr.'s contribution as well, because one of the things that I think we don't talk about enough is how few inkers, like how few straight up inking jobs there are in the X books right now, because the majority of our artists are inking, if
themselves.
not also, yeah, and a number coloring themselves as well. When Marte is not running it,
it's making my credits job really strange. Like, it's
Yes.
making my credits job really fucking weird. When I put this stuff together, I'm like, oh, okay, Nick Dragata did everything?
Phil Noto did everything. Rod Reyes did everything. Yeah, there's a number of them who are working, and even when they're not coloring themselves, they tend to be doing their own inks. On the few times that I can remember having seen specific inkers, it felt like they were bringing someone in for a time crunch or covering up a rush job. It wasn't some of the best art, but this was solid, classic, just pencil ink colored team work.
Eaton and Junior work really well together, generally speaking.
And just to give everybody a little context on who Scott Eaton is, just in case you have perhaps never noticed his name on a cover or on a credits page before, he's probably best known in the X universe for his extensive work on X-Men Legacy. He is responsible for the X-Men Original Sin miniseries and arc in X-Men Legacy along the pages of Dark Wolverine. He's also known for 2 issues of New X-Men, a handful of New Excalibur, as well as playing a large part in the Silver Surfer in the 90s, which, not X-Men, but it's sort of interesting that this guy's had such a long and varied career. Though to say that he's been in some high-profile stuff, just take a look at his Doom War miniseries, which is just about as high-profile as it got for a while. So,
but most importantly, he did my 2 favorite issues of Mike Carey X-Men Legacy, 215 and 216, which I get to bring up again. I hate to say it,
he actually didn't do 216.
He didn't do 216?
He did 215 and picked back up at 217, but he actually missed a handful of X-Men Legacy.
He's certainly welcome on this book. I would love to see more of him. I would love to see more of this team in general, including Matt Wilson on Wolverine, if it's going to continue. But it's just, at this point, it's an auxiliary X-Force book.
Well, yeah, and
Rod Briones did 216. Right.
And, Steve, I love that you called it the auxiliary X-Force book, because that's how I feel about it as well. Now, I know people probably get tired of me saying it, but we need to stop having such a linear idea of 22 pages makes a comic. 22 pages does not make a comic. 22 pages makes the standard corporate comic.
Yes.
And I would much sooner and much rather pay $4.99 once a month for a 32-page Wolverine and X-Force hybrid book that puts a lot more emphasis on Wolverine.
Yeah, and
I
that
would
would just
just
be
rather that.
Wolverine and X Force, or I'm even fine with Wolverine taking a backseat because for me, X Force has been in large part a beast book, not heroically leading it, but it has been much about his decline.
X-Force is an interesting book because even though it's the team book, it's never the team book. It's
Exactly,
been the Domino book, or it's been the Beast book, or
or the
it's been the Kid
Colossus book.
Omega book, or it's been the Colossus book. It's never actually been a team book, which is interesting. To me, these are just the same. Like they could yeah. There's been a couple team things. I loved when Forge was in it early on. But for the most part, and Wolverine and X Force could just be one oversized monthly because to me they're the same thing. Only one of them has my favorite artist working today half the time in Josh Cassara. So I mean, this becomes Auxiliary X Force because it never has Cassara time.
Yeah,
And
so true.
And it's also that like you could read X Force and not read Wolverine, but I don't really think you can read Wolverine and not read X Force at some points, just because it does get too awkward and
Yeah,
like there's like some blanks. So like it that also makes it kind of like a weird thing where you kind of need to read this one comic in order to understand the Wolverine, but you can't. It just makes for like weird reading order and bringing new readers into continuity and stuff like that. And like if you're not a fan of X Force, but you are a fan of Wolverine, then it like it's kind of like you're forced to read this other book, kind of, and it's
That's a great point. If you had only read Wolverine 1 through 13 and not read any issues of X Force, you would have fuck all idea of what was going on in this issue.
this issue was just a part 2 of X Force at the Gala.
Yeah,
I had to reread it.
I just did a huge reread of Hoxpox, right? I'm almost done. I'm almost caught up. I am well past X of Swords. I've read a number of the titles, and one of the things that I kept having to do is be like, okay, where should I cross back over? I want to make sure that I read Rachel Getting Amazing Baby before I start X Factor. So, I was making sure to do things like that. And I just hit a fucking point where I was like, what's just the interpolated order on X Force and Wolverine? What is just the interpolated fucking order? Because Omega Red bounces from book to book. There's this sense of bad Russia from book to book.
Ugh.
It's a lot of
Mhm.
gymnastics that you kind of have to do with these two titles. And for that reason, I myself am in this same camp that it really is that they are giving Percy one big double title, and historically having a big double title with two different names doesn't really work. It maybe should just be Wolverine and X-Force twice a month.
For a straight cis white man to have the double title as well, in this
It's
series
a
is like
complicated situation.
and
it's so much.
another thing too that we talk about a lot is how it's going to read in trade form. Because if you just pick up the Dawn or the Rain series, then you'll be fine and you'll get the whole story if you're reading all of it.
Yeah.
But if you just pick up the X Force or if you just pick up the Wolverine, you're gonna get holes in your story.
Well, and I definitely, yeah, 1,000%.
That's kind of just why it should be either one giant issue a month or just a bi-weekly.
Now, to talk about a few things that happen in this issue, LOL, I want to bring up three major things. Number one, I don't think this Wade reads like recent Wade. Number two,
Not at all.
I loved seeing Domino and Sage be wonderful badass ladies. And number three, kill your gays. Happy Pride.
Ugh. Yeah.
Okay, so let's work backwards here and start with Kill Your Gaze because it's important and it's actually the page I already had open to. Kill Your Gaze, bad during Pride Month, worse. Also, I don't want to blame the sexy lumberjack for this. And, I haven't mentioned it yet in this episode, so if Steven's not familiar, my favorite work by Ben Percy are his sexy lumberjack thirst trap videos he posts on Twitter.
I very much agree. They are his best Wolverine work.
Yes, absolutely. this was our big Hellfire Gala piece. Like, this is what tied it in. To me, this felt like his share of the crossover story. And, that he was just responsible for writing the Marauder getting hijacked and Christian killed. Like, that wasn't part of his plotting or storying. Now, I could be wrong. Like, we don't know who was responsible for what, but this felt very much like part of the Gala storyline because it was following up on those Shi'ar crystals that Emma had sent Christian to secretly take out and all of that.
Yeah.
Well, my
Yeah,
question,
and
my main
Ultimately,
question is, we have a dolphin on the page, right? And we know that manslaughter is off attacking at the gala. So are we to believe that that's Dr. Echo from the pages of Weapon Plus?
oh my god. I would like to point out to Josh's last point that ultimately the responsibility for this lies with the editor as well.
Oh, for sure. And, the only thing I will ding is it does seem like this is just another story of a gay man being snuck up on. Like,
or is Christian going to be the one that like the huge death of, and that's who they're investigating in X Factor, and who the trial of Magneto is
It would be
allegedly going
completely
to be
wild for that
about.
to happen in Wolverine.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. It's just the
Yeah.
happening of it is in Wolverine. Because X Factor is the next part of the gala. It's going to be investigating that.
Yeah, I could easily see X Factor investigating Christian's death. That's true.
but I think there would be a really missed opportunity to understand the emotional impact of the story by so far removing it from the writer, Jerry Dugan, who's been responsible for the sort of crescendo of Christian in the Hoxpox era, as well as by putting it in X Factor, a book that is so foreign to Emma. While Leah Williams writes a tremendous Emma, Emma as a central driving focus of the final issue of X Factor, the way she would need to be for an investigation of her brother's murder, would be really anathema to the ideas of what X Factor has represented as a series and all of the characters that have to be packed into this final issue to make it pop. So if this is the big death, I feel like we're kind of treading back into X of Swords. This is some weird timed plotting problems.
I mean, I don't think this is necessarily the big death, if only because it seems like it's a Hellfire Club deal. Not so much anything to do with maybe Magneto.
Yeah, I have trouble believing that the death to go on trial for would be like,
A
for
mutant?
me. Yes, the
Yeah,
trial
right.
of Magneto. There's only 3 laws. Like it.
Yeah.
His trial has to be either killing a human, not making more mutants, or violating the sacred land, which I think we pretty clearly got this week at the end of another issue that like his crime is going to be violating the sacred land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we all assumed murder because like
Murder.
we're comic conditioned for big trials to be about murder, but I think he's going to be on trial for violating the sacred land. He brought a pretender on.
We know all about Kill Your Gays, Happy Pride. So my next question is, how do you guys feel about Sage and Domino finally getting, not finally, because I've both gotten a number of times in the spotlight, but I feel like this was a really great balance of Wolverine getting his, overwhelming due, and other characters still managing to exist.
Yeah, it was really good to see Sage in this issue. I've become more and more of a fan of her in this era, and seeing her get to put Beast back into his place for even a second was immensely satisfying. Her emphasis on rectifying what was a massive and horrific, what she calls a mistake, but was intentional on Beast's part, as opposed to covering up and hiding away the problem the way Beast intends to, is welcome and wonderful to see. And I love the idea of Krakoa giving reparations to the Terra Verdeans for their crimes against them, their gigantic crimes against them, even if maybe it doesn't necessarily go very far beyond just basically resolving the issue.
Yeah, to me, it just seems like they met their demands, but the Televerdens are still not happy about like
I wouldn't
everything
either.
that happened, and it's like, yeah, we're not going to say anything, but like you guys are still like pieces of shit, and fuck you.
You're still trash bags.
Well, I had a little bit of, I don't know, the way it was done at the end. Because as I said earlier, like this issue felt, pace wise in terms of what Percy's building, like he had one major idea he wanted to cover and then the rest of it was filler. So for all of those other pages and what was going on, it really felt odd that that the whole reconciliation, and that we just got it in text. Like, we just got like a text summary of like the reparations plan, and we're done. Like, and we're done with, hand washing, wave it off, like, and we're done with this,
It was a very quick tie-up.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. In a single page of text.
I do like, I think, oddly enough, because it's a Wolverine issue, that I think this might be one of the most balanced X-Force issues we got in terms of character time.
That's what I was just saying. Yeah,
I'm not
it felt like
doing,
Wolverine got his due.
Yes.
I didn't do a meta-analysis on it with like, panel rate per character and balancing them out.
Fuck you then.
But it felt very balanced. To me, though, I'm in such Domino withdrawals because we've been getting so little of her, and I love Nina, that like her getting balanced didn't feel like enough. It felt like a little bit of a tease, because it was like, yes, I'm getting some Domino, but no, you can't just give me like normal amounts spaced out on a team book when I've, when like, where the fuck has she been for the last 6 months? So
I actually want to ask you a question then, Josh. If you're as big a Domino fan as I am, and hopefully Steve and Drew, you guys at least love you some Domino, but I personally have been thinking she would be better served on the Sword Station. I think if we're talking about being out in space, they kind of do need a lot of luck. I'm not trying to be silly, but
no, I would love to see her a long shot up there.
Yeah, it would really benefit the team to have that kind of supernatural support.
So I really want to see her on a female-focused book. I want to see her written by a woman with lots of other women around her. Gail Simone's book wasn't perfect, but it brought out something in the character that was obviously lacking, being written by males who utilized her primarily to be like a fuck object for like how
any number of
strong and virile other men were for so long, that I do love, like, I would love to see her, and I know that we've just shuffled other characters around, but like, I would love to see her on a book with, like Betsy and Rogue. Not necessarily like with Excalibur magic, but just, I would like to see her with other female characters, not having to be, someone's sexy lamb.
So,
Nico, do you remember? I think we talked about this back in December. Do you remember the last thing that I was working on for my website before I started the campaign and stopped doing any comics writing?
weren't you doing cover gallery and issue summaries for 90s comics?
Yes, and then I started to deep dive. I was doing a deep dive on X-Force 4, I want to say it is, either 4 or 6, but the bathtub issue.
Yep,
I was doing a deep dive on the bathtub issue, trying to figure out and get exact dimensions for how big Cable drew Rob Liefeld, what the size of that fucking bathtub would, how Cable was not drawing Rob Liefeld.
No, I think at some point it did become that Cable was drawing Rob Liefeld. I do think that happened.
With how big Rob Liefeld was drawing Cable, giving him all sorts of additional muscles that humans don't have on top of like the regular muscles, to figure out what the actual dimensions of that bathtub would be. But I say that to say this, which is that for a very long time, Domino's like greatest hits, if you're like, oh, what are the best Domino issues or Domino's? So like, what are the most memorable Domino moments? Well, it's Domino in a bathtub with Cable. It's Domino and Wolverine fucking so loudly that Scott and Emma can hear them through the walls of the hotel room. It's Domino, being sad because she's throwing herself at Colossus trying to fuck him and he's too much of a sad boy to notice. It's like everything was just about Domino as sex object for a big male character.
Yeah.
When it comes to Domino in this series, I mean, she hasn't shown up much in Wolverine, but I can obviously talk about her in X-Force, which is, I've really enjoyed how Domino has been characterized and how she's been drawn in this particular era, the Krakoan era. I want to talk a little bit about the seemingly dropped plot of Domino's horrific trauma at the hands of Xeno.
Oh, for sure.
Being erased, presumably by Colossus. And yeah. I want justice for that. I am so mad at him, and I'm never going to forgive him.
I keep waiting for that, right? Like, yes. Because then Domino just got dropped. Like,
why
then we Colossus, just got no Domino stories for like a year after that.
Why is Colossus getting stories where he is maybe being victimized by the Krakoan state? Like, oh, poor Colossus, he's just trying to live his life in the Savage Land. And all I can see when I look at him with that lady in the Savage Land is like, Colossus, you are just trying to run away and escape from this horrific thing that you did and that you won't acknowledge. And it's driving me insane because I know Sage is cognizant of this as well. And
Sage is cognizant of everything.
it is from the early stages of X-Force, it was a crime on par with what Beast was doing. Obviously, Beast has eclipsed Colossus in the War Crimes Department, but what Colossus did, and I am presuming it was Colossus because she asked him very specifically to let her keep her trauma, and he seemingly goes, oh, well, no, actually, this will be better for her if I just snip this away.
You mean he said no da?
Oh,
Now,
okay,
there's
yes.
also a little bit like a disconnect there between the way Percy described that process, as if like Colossus gets to decide how much memory Domino keeps, versus what we've seen in other books with Resurrection Protocols about, and as I'm especially thinking of X-Men, Hickman's X-Men recently, with the Cerebro backup times and that buffer time in between and we saw it in Way of X as well, in between your last backup and your death, that disposable time that you just don't keep anyway.
But she had already had the trauma for far too long for it to have been erased at that point. She was going on another mission after resting after the first one.
Yeah.
She had that traumatic memory. So it does seem that Colossus may have gone to Xavier and said, well, she asked me to erase the trauma. I was there at her death.
And the resolution of that would have been far more interesting than,
Than her saying, I get over it, Wolverine, don't ask me about it, it's none of your business. I mean, maybe it will
or
be
half of the plots that Percy has given us in Wolverine and X Factor since then.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I'm
not the Quentin stuff. The Quentin stuff was the bomb.
I'm a really big fan of Jason Aaron's work in general, and I'm kind of a Jason Aaron's Avengers defender, but I feel as though one of the criticisms I can't escape of that book is it's kind of the everything book. Just literally everything happens in that book nonstop from the beginning of the issue. Like they just put everything in there. And sometimes it's too many plots. And that's how I'm really starting to feel about X-Force. I'm beginning to feel like, I did just notice having reread it that after Ten of Swords, there's so little Domino, it's not funny. The book became about other things, and it's almost like Ben Percy said, I'm being given a chance to write Wolverine, and I'm being given a chance to write X-Force. I'm going to do everything. I'm going to do the best hits of Wolverine. I'm going to do the greatest hits of X-Force. And I feel like if he wasn't constantly inundated by the realities of corporate comics, he might have a shot. But unfortunately, the amount of forced crossover, like this appearance from Deadpool, which didn't work for me.
Same.
On the heels of Kelly Thompson's Deadpool, on the heels of Dugan's Deadpool, this felt like a time travel Deadpool I did not need. I don't know who said Deadpool needs to be edgy again, but no, Deadpool needs to have like pies in the face. Deadpool doesn't need to be edgy.
After The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, we got a definitive Deadpool story that also featured Wolverine that, you can't go back and undo that and just make him the who was the fucker who just made it silly slapstick shit all the time? The guy who wrote Thunderbolts as well. You can't just go...
Daniel Way?
Daniel Way, thank you! Daniel Way, and what he brought over into the Thunderbolts issue. Daniel Way's was just slapstick nonsense Deadpool. And yeah, like we've passed that. Dugan humanized him and grounded him in the world and gave him real human relationships. And, after The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, like you can't just go back to Daniel Way Deadpool, especially when you're throwing it into the Hellfire Gala, in the Reign of X, in the Krakoan era, with all of this other stuff. Like it's... Yeah, it just, like you said, it's time travel. Like, why is this version of Deadpool here?
Drew, is this your Drew pool, or do you prefer a very different sort of Deadpool?
I
don't like that I said Deadpool, so I'm going to say that again. Deadpool.
Like Domino, I also I have the same feelings with Domino as I do with Deadpool, kind of like, again, all in the same same zone. I did though think that his dialogue was a little slapsticky, like Josh was saying. It was a little... I do find Deadpool can be like more crude than the comic allowed for. It was also just like I get what he was trying to do. It was an X-Force book, so he was trying to like bring all the like we said before, but Yeah, it was just the dialogue for me that was not really it.
Well,
Yeah.
we've sort of talked around this book, about this book, and up and down this book for about 45 minutes. So we've managed to sort of discuss the book holistically without ever acknowledging the
Hey,
plot.
we've given you a solid 15 minutes of content in that time.
I actually think that this is one of our best Wolverine discussions in a while because it stayed mostly on topic, and that's, mostly on topic. So here's my question for you guys. I've been thinking a lot lately about one of the things that has made Wolverine feel so aimless. And, Steve, I blame thank you. It's a blame thank because you kind of made exactly why it's not working interesting for me. I am no Sabretooth fan. I'm not. I just don't like Sabretooth. I just think he's awful. But I think that there's this attempt to redefine Wolverine in a Sabertoothless world. And I don't know if it's the Romulus of it. I don't know if it's the idea that Wolverine and Sabretooth are eternally a claw based dyad who are going to go at each other. And it really does stretch way back before Jeff Loeb ever put his fingers on Wolverine. But rather, I think what we're still seeing is the reverberations of why Origin was a mistake. And I'm not trying to be like super funny, but like I know I'm being really funny, but Origin was a mistake.
A lot of we've had this. You and I have done this on a previous Wolverine issue that we did, but a lot of Wolverine solo stories are a mistake.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Yes, and going back to what I said I like about Wolverine earlier, that he is that Batman, that he can be so many different things. I'm glad Sabretooth's off the table because I think one of the problems with Sabretooth is that Wolverine can be so many different things, but Sabretooth shouldn't be.
Yes,
And
amazing. Yes, I love that you said it that way. Yes.
writers have constantly tried to be like, well, we're going to do a samurai issue, so we'll have Samurai Sabretooth. Or we're going to do a mobster, a gritty mob story, so we'll have Mobster Sabretooth. Or we're going to do, no. Wolverine can blend and go from world to world, but Sabretooth doesn't follow him like that. Like,
I'm
that
sorry
don't
you all want to jack your
work.
dick wearing a blonde pelt, but that is not the same thing as making
Yes.
Sabretooth multifaceted.
Yes. And so I'm glad that he's off the table, but yeah, in here, and we've mentioned this in a number of the other rooms, Percy has done an astounding amount of stories in his first 12 issues of Wolverine. In 12 issues of Wolverine,
And they
we
all have
got
vampires and Omega Red.
vampire arcs, we got
Maverick.
the Big Lebowski, and is she the pale girl or the green girl,
And the
or
sick daughter. And the sick daughter of
yes.
the guy.
We got Solemn. We got
We got Patch and
Maverick. We got there's another one in between that and fuck. And then we've come back to vampires. And I remember when we were talking about that first one, Back to Vampires, it was like, fuck, of all the stories we could have revisited, vampires would have been on the bottom of my list. But also, good lord, how has he had 5 arcs in the first 12 issues? What?
Well, that first issue was like 89, 5, 42, 13 pages.
It was a double issue. It was
the arcs have been mainly meandering in a lot of ways. I mean, I feel like
yes.
the Maverick arc is the only one that is cohesive for me.
But he's had so many arcs, but also what the fuck has happened?
And
he's had so many arcs, but what are we doing with Wolverine? It felt like this was going to be PTSD Wolverine, or this was going to be, Wolverine trying to adjust to live in a world without violence.
The X-Men again.
And now it's just Wolverine, as the X Factor supplemental issue, or but what? But what is it? Because he's doing so much. He's moving through arcs so fast, but to what extent? And I would even say the same thing on his X Factor. X-Force. I'm sorry, thank you.
No,
his X-Force started out as the lore-heavy comic in Dawn of X, which was great for those of us just thirsty for lore. But at some point, if it's going to be the Black Ops X-Force comic, we should have specific, definitive, closed arcs of X-Force about operations, not meandering drama crossing, bleeding into Wolverine, just dragging on other stories, or bouncing around to being solo spotlights of all these characters that again have nothing to do with or
core narrative.
tenuously connected to the ongoing drama. What? Yeah,
we're sitting here saying, what's the core narrative of the last combined 40 issues. If you take out X-Force, there's kind of a narrative. But when you put Wolverine in, it suddenly becomes too big. However, Wolverine doesn't read complete without X-Force, and X-Force doesn't even complete Wolverine. So what we're
Yeah.
looking at is an ancillary book that somehow weakens the efficacy of its mainline partner.
Yeah, I've got 35 issues, right? I've got 6 to 7 trades worth of Wolverine and X-Force. And a fuck ton of different plots and stories that have happened. But like what? Like what happened and resolved in 35 issues? Like what has like aside from I'm maybe just latching on to like the Kid Omega arc.
No, it was
But
that good.
yes, it was.
It was
But like
absolutely
what
good.
else has been like a well-paced or organized like set up, run, concluded arc that has consequences and growth to lead into the next thing? Like what
Just
else
Solemn.
has maybe, and I'll go back and say that Solemn was 2 issues that should have been 1, maybe 1 oversized, but Solemn, as much as we just love Solemn, and I think now we're just missing him because why the fuck haven't we got the best new character from these last 13 issues to appear again?
Right.
When the last time we saw him, he flew off on a fucking zombie dragon in Otherworld. Like, where is Solemn and the zombie dragon? But yeah, like even at the time, like reading those 2 issues, that was not 45 pages worth of comic.
Solomon Zombie, born on a Mondi. Got it.
Good one. I like that.
Hey guys, if you like that cut from X's4 Podcast, you'll be sure to like some of our other materials. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out these other amazing videos here at X's4 Podcast.